Okay, what is this, number 4?
Yep.
Number
This is
4.
officially number 4.
Good.
podcast.
It's really good that this is number 4 because that balances out to our average viewership.
Yeah.
We got a solid 4 people constantly listening to this shit. So I mean that's good. I'm very proud of that.
Shout out to the one person who told me about the podcast. They're like, "Hey, did you do a podcast this week?"
Oh, look at
Like,
that.
Nope.
Who was that person?
That was Brian Price.
Brian. Oh, look at
He's a high
that.
scholl friend.
Oh, look at that. That's
Yeah.
nice. Well, shout out to
Yeah,
Brian,
I
a
mean,
friend of the show.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't know. We could talk about anything. Do you have anything pressing in mind?
And I can't say I've got anything. It'll bubble to the surface, I think.
So I just came back from convocation, and it was a really interesting convocation. They combined art with violin players and stuff, and they were talking about environmental issues and violin and art. And there was a physicist, the dude who was talking about it, the presenter dude. He was a physicist, and he was talking about it. So you know how physicists are. You got to be crazy to do physics.
Yeah.
And
very, very romantic people. I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So no, but he spoke quite eloquently, as one might imagine, and yeah, dude, I just have all these questions in my head, society and how all these major issues, these issues of race and these issues of class and these issues of these power struggles essentially, all throughout the world and stuff. When you talk about environmental change, some people, they say, well, we have all these human problems and they don't at all relate to these environmental problems. But I'd say no, I think they do, man. I think they completely do. If we begin to look at the scope of the scope of our power as a human society and its impacts on the greater living ecosystem on Earth. Yeah. You see that our systems, our ideologies, in whatever form they come to life. And obviously I'm talking about capitalism. Yeah. I'm just gonna say it. I don't have to keep anybody guessing. Capitalism and globalization.
Specifically, American capitalism.
Absolutely. And American capitalism is what influences this whole system of production and stuff that has impacted the world in such a negative way. We don't need to lie about it.
I find it so fascinating being coming from my semester abroad in New Zealand
Mm-hmm.
and seeing kind of the drastic effects of they're feeling a lot more of the effects of climate change,
right.
And they're trying to do a lot more substantially
mm-hmm.
to change that, and having a very advanced recycling program, having a very advanced water treatment, having taxes in place in order to make sure that people limit
mm-hmm.
how much waste they're producing
mm-hmm.
within the community, and just comparing that to coming back here and being oh, you're just in a lot more of a rush, a lot more of
Of course, man, because
a technological
Of course, yeah.
cycle.
Did you watch the Republican debate yesterday?
No, I didn't have the opportunity to watch.
Good,
it.
you don't have to. There are highlights. One of the highlights
Exactly, yeah.
it's just like sports. One of the highlights from yesterday's debate was this quote from Marco Rubio. He said, "We need more welders than philosophers." And I thought that was such a revealing statement about the Republican Party, but also just this American this thought that we need people to work. Why do we need people to work? Oh, don't worry about why we need people to work. Don't be a philosopher. Be a welder. Be somebody that makes something. But why? Why do we have to make something? Can everybody make something? No. Not everybody's making something. What does it mean to make something? it was kind of weird. It was like Marco Rubio just like, if you're someone who doesn't look at these things critically, which is honestly, let's be honest, the majority of Americans.
No, they don't have the time.
They don't have the time because they're too busy doing something.
That's the advantages of being a college student. You have more time to think about this stuff.
Of course. We're all philosophy. It's about being a liberal arts college student, I think, man, it's kind of crazy, like, where we're moving. Because it seems like, where are we moving? We got to ask ourselves that question, and we don't take that very seriously, I don't think, as a generation. I don't know, what do you have to say to that?
No, it's a very tough thing to do nowadays, especially with like such a short-term gratification, like cycling through that, and kind of you want to see success. You want to see success immediately as it's happening, and it's something that it doesn't change overnight, but it's it's part of like our American capitalism system. Like everyone wants to hit the lottery.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they also, some people in society, the politicians, specifically the Republican politicians, they just want you to fit into the society of the past.
Of course.
And like the society of just like,
I think
to benefit a couple wealthy people.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, I think, Democrats also sort of fall under that system as well.
No, and I think
in a lesser sense.
That can kind of be the trappings. I think of a lot of people don't kind of underestimate that, of like within the EPA or something, that it kind of creates this sense of stability and stuff.
Right.
Like kind of something that can be necessarily opposed by the Democrats, but is kind of created. And
it's a very complex. It's a very complicated. Yeah. It's a very complicated. It's a very complicated thing. I just think it's important to ask ourselves, and when we're going to put our PAGS majors hats on, our Peace and Global Studies majors hats, I'm going to borrow a line from them. What's at stake? I think that's such a good question. I have a friend. She's a PAGS major, and we joke about this a lot. We use what's at stake, but what's at stake? But it's actually a fantastic question. What is at stake? In our political system, in the way our economic systems are impacting the environment, are impacting our own human ecosystem, in the form of racism, dog. Because like all of this system is perpetuated because you have some people who are willing to say, yeah, we're going to be we're going to work so that we can be better than other people. So we can be better than people who have different skin tones than us, people who speak differently than us. That when you begin to put things into context, and this is what, going back to my previous point, is everything is connected. It's not, we don't need to separate ourselves, as a coalition of people who are, I'm not going to say enlightened because that's kind of a pretentious word, but self-critical, Yeah. And so if we don't, take some time to really come together and look at this with that sort of critical perspective, we're just going to let the people in power, the people who have constructed and run the institutions of today, run everything. And then, but it doesn't just affect them, it affects us too. And what are we, unwilling, participants? Where's our power? Where's our voice?
Yeah.
And who's
within voting? just within voting, or
Darren, who's speaking for the fish? Who's speaking for the fish that are the fish in the fisheries that are dying every fucking day because there's too much plastic and fucking acidity in the fucking ocean? Nobody's gonna speak for them. Somebody's got to be, there's got to be enlightened self-interest here. For the future of this planet. I think that's what's at stake. I'm gonna answer the question. I think the future of this planet. And every human.
Who can truly speak for other parts of the planet, other than humans?
That's
the craziest thing is, we're trying to do this on ourselves, caring for everything and, helping everyone out.
I think you're right. No. It's tough, man. It's not easy.
No.
It's not easy at all.
It's not always easy to make those connections.
No. It's
everyone,
it requires,
every person. Yeah.
It requires a lot, man. It requires a lot. It requires, I think, a change in the education system, but also like in the value system, in our culture,
Yeah,
I think a culture matters
cultural
too.
value system.
Yeah.
Like,
In comedy.
Yeah.
Why can't as comedians? Why can't we, or aspiring comedians rather? Why can't you and I like take a problem like environmental change, something that's sort of unpopular in the American consciousness, and bring some awareness to it, and like even if people are laughing about it, get people thinking, the same way that like I don't know, Dave Chappelle and like Chris Rock and all these people like sort of made these like urban stories, these stories of like urban like struggle,
talking about the differences in race within urban background.
Within urban context, right. Why can't we do that, and connect it somehow? I think as comedians, as people who want to like do something, whatever you want to do in life.
I think that's a very underdeveloped comedic issue. Is kind of like environmental and like bringing in, I've said like elements of science.
Right. Yes.
Which are
correct.
Like, supposed to help us out and supposed to like make a better future.
It makes things cool.
Into comedy.
It makes things cool for the kids too, because I mean, who's listening to comedy nowadays? The kids are listening to comedy. Our generation, I think, has a big appreciation for performing artists, And so, as people who aspire to do that, like I think, we can't just be like whatever. We just can't play to the market sometimes. Like if you want to be a trendsetter, if you want to be a visionary, if you want to be somebody that like has something to say that matters.
Yeah.
You gotta say those types of things that aren't easy, and it's not easy to come up with. Like, how do you? Right now, I couldn't think of a joke to write about an environmental, like a joke that would be, positive in a way, like get people thinking about it. I need to learn more too.
Yeah,
it's a whole process.
That's definitely true. I don't know if I could do that either. That's a good challenge.
It's a good challenge, right?
Next time we do stand up.
Heck yeah, we could. I'd be down for it.
Just doing environmental jokes. Yeah, I think that's always an interesting point of like trying to get your ideas across within like a comedic structure.
Yeah,
it's like a difficult.
It's very hard to do.
The best comedians can do it well on subjects.
My god!
That's what I love about watching Aziz Ansari's like discussion of modern relationships and technology. That's been something like on my mind a little bit.
No, that's
watching Masters of None. It's such a it's an advancement like within comedy.
Because it's so easy, man. It's so easy to do certain things in comedy. Yeah. Like it's so easy to get like certain types of laughs. Like the easy laughs. I hate those laughs so much. I hate the laughs that I'm like, I made this joke that, is funny to everybody and like, so everybody's going to get it and stuff. And it seems counterintuitive to a consumer of comedy. But for a performer, you really want to hit on those jokes that nobody's thinking about. You know what I mean?
And I think elements of like, that are just under the pop culture, like consciousness.
Right.
That need to be raised into like,
that's a good way of looking at it.
I think that's a very interesting thing that I always like try to approach of like when I'm watching movies and like trying to bring in these movies that like show these development characters that can kind of be ignored by popular culture and replaced with like I don't know, the Transformers and even the James Bonds, man.
Oh yeah, dude, yeah. It's like it's really it's a challenge. It's a challenge to try to bring those things, bring that consciousness, that underdeveloped consciousness, let's say, into the spotlight, even if it's only for 5 minutes. It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Like connecting with people who you might not, you might not have conversations with. They might be in a completely different environment.
They are. I mean, you're a comedian.
They're separate. Yeah.
I mean, you're a comedian.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking about like the separation of like the underclassmen on our campus.
Hey, do either of you guys know how to make things line up on a resume on Microsoft?
I have no idea.
No.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
No problem. Don't worry about it.
Have a nice day.
So, back to the show. So we, where were we?
Okay, we were kind of just talking about like movies and like kind of developing ideas that might not be like on the consciousness of like younger people at this college, you know.
Yeah. Oh, different bubbles, different circles. Right.
Yeah,
I see what you mean.
bubbles. Like you know, I come from like a white suburban bubble where I've been kind of able to expose myself to a lot, like a fuckload of television shows and stuff.
Right.
Of HBO shows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not everyone has the ability to watch HBO or.
I know, dude. I wish more people could watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. I wish more people could watch like all these, like everybody's pirating Game of Thrones, right? But
because
but there are a lot of good
it's
shows.
Become that massive a show.
Yeah.
Like, other shows like outside of Netflix that are like these premium shows that like I don't know if people get access to these or like stuff that I don't necessarily get access. Like I don't read that many books.
Right.
Intelligent, like
I think that's fine.
Books.
I think as long as we find a space for people who like do read a lot of books and who do have access to like these like, you know, premium like this premium entertainment, right? What is premium entertainment, right? What is the difference between an HBO show, a show on HBO, and something that you would find on Netflix? Because I was watching Masters of None recently. What a good show. It's a fantastic show. I mean, it's a high quality show, but you know.
That's what's so.
But you look at a show like Flight of the Conchords, made 10 years ago, and that type of like comedy is like that type of entertainment is like really
Netflix
like top
is like
notch.
pushing it up.
They're
trying it out with Masters of None. Like that could be on HBO or something like that.
It reminds me.
But it's tough to get that programming.
It reminds me a lot of Louis, dog. Masters of None in a lot of its elements. It's not the same show. That's not what I'm arguing. But what I'm saying is rather it borrows some of those like elements and stuff. Like I'm sure Aziz had a big part in the way the show was like said and stuff.
Yeah.
And like that's pretty big, having like you know stars.
No, they both said that they were very inspired by like Woody Allen cinematography and like Woody Allen's writing style within their comedy, which is very easy to see.
Let me tell you something. Let me push against that idea a little bit.
Yeah.
As somebody who like, I don't know, like for me, I've tried watching Woody Allen films, and maybe I should give it another watch. I'm sure I'd appreciate them more now that I have a better context of things. But watching them growing up, like as a kid and stuff, I didn't get that. I didn't understand Seinfeld growing up.
Really? Yeah. I can be honest. I think there are a lot of things that went over my head. Now, the more I thought about it, like I watched Seinfeld in like 6th, 7th grade. I don't know. That's.
What? There we go.
Yeah. Always show up.
Yeah. No. I just think it's kind of interesting what we consume, like as a society.
But what we consume as like youth.
Yeah.
As
youth.
We're watching like 90s sitcoms.
Right.
Or like I don't know. Or other people.
Who was making those? Who were making those shows that we?
Seinfeld. Well, that was made by
Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
And what context are they working out of, right? Because like that's an important thing to like denote. Like I see like a lot of cartoon shows. I grew up watching a lot of cartoons, and so like Ren and Stimpy, and like a lot, and then also like a lot of Japanese anime, and sort of like now that I've grown older, like I realize I know a little bit more about Japanese history. Just the littlest bit.
That's so fascinating that I don't have that connection.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that.
Interesting. That's not.
What would you say about Japanese anime that makes it so crucially distinct?
I think what's important to recognize about Japanese anime is what it's working off of. Like anything, it's almost a universal like this universal principle for understanding entertainment is where is it coming from? What is it influenced by? Right? And so you see these like shows that come up in the 80s and 90s, and this is quality like these are quality shows like Dragon Ball Z, like for a kid that shit's awesome, dude. And what is it based on? Well, it's based on like ancient like Chinese and Japanese like mythology and stuff, which is true of a lot of like American programming
Yeah.
too, especially when you consider Greek,
A lot of old cartoons.
Greek
yeah.
and Roman, Western civilization, blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah.
You see that, but you also see in the decades leading up to the development of these shows, you see Japan with a great economic boom. Japan in the 60s and 70s was one of the strongest, and to this day still is in many ways, not as strong as it was relatively to its position in the 1970s, 60s through like 80s and stuff. There's a crash in the 90s, which is very interesting, which is when all this programming like came out.
Really?
For it's fascinating, dude. It's fascinating when you begin to like trace back and try to understand and put things into context. Like it all makes sense, and then that gives you, I think, or it gives one a better understanding of where you're going. If you say, let's say you want to create something.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to be a welder, Marco Rubio. Maybe I want to create a show. Maybe I want to create something that brings people together.
Yeah.
Because that's what I see in the value of performing. The value of performing, whether it's comedy, whether it's poetry, whether it's music, is here's the economic benefit, if there is any. Here's the benefit. Fuck economics.
Yeah.
It brings people together. It brings consciousness together. I think it's important.
Happy people together.
Well, not even happy people. Sad people too. Sad people have a right to come together as well.
Yeah.
Crazy people, inspired people, people who are down on their luck. Look at Kendrick's "To Pimp a Butterfly."
Yeah, that's a very impactful album that can be interpreted in many different ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And you're speaking to another nature of like good art,
Yeah.
good like of a good. I don't like to call it a product because it's more than just a product.
Yeah.
It's
the way we worship it as like this art form.
Yeah.
And like kind of meditating on depression, racial identity.
Mm-hmm.
Other people are just gonna drink to it and try and find a little bit of meaning of their own.
Yeah, totally. It's important. It's important. It's important to recognize this and to see and to look at it and where we are and yeah. I can't wait. I want to get to the point where when we can perform more often. So I think there's such a value in just constantly performing and stuff, and like that's something that I'm really looking forward to about going like back home. Like once I get my schedule like ready and done, like once I have like a regular schedule, once I buy a car, once I like now I know all the good
spots. Just a really shitty job,
Just a shitty job. Well, a job, just something that can help me and my parents out, whatever.
Yeah.
Get myself by for a little bit, keep performing, see what happens.
No, I think right now I need to look up more advice from comedians, but so far I've just read like
You gotta hear the
one thing,
podcast.
Anthony Jeselnik, where it's like every morning he wakes up, writes 3 jokes every morning, puts those jokes away, and just like kind of references and reads over like some old material
Interesting.
to try and find some meaning in it.
I think that's a good. No.
Just constantly trying to get ideas out there.
Yeah. No, I think podcasts are good, like a good outlet for people who are like performers and stuff.
But I think this brings up like a good point within internet culture of like how easy it is to access various other cultures and like you really have to strive and like want to be able to access those cultures of like Japanese, Korean, and Chinese like popular cultures, which are like massively expanding within American cultures.
Yeah.
Like as
on a bunch of different levels. Immigration. Not that this has to do with anything, but like immigration in the United States, a lot of people are looking at like illegal immigration. That's when this whole immigration fight, it's all about illegal immigration. That's what people are trying to present.
Yeah,
but people aren't thinking about legal immigration. Okay? Legal immigration, who are the people that are coming here like in just like masses, like legally? Asians.
Yeah,
Asians. You look at California, dog.
Asians,
Indians. Yeah, well, Asians.
Indians, Africans.
Yeah. People are coming here in masses legally, and I don't know. I think there's something to be said about that. There's something to be considered there.
Considering whether that will have the impact in changing like our culture,
It totally will.
what those impacts will be. Whether we'll still want to be welders, you know, or maybe be.
Are we? But the thing is, are we even welders right now? That's my question. When did we stop being welders? And what's so good about being a welder? What's so good about being a welder? Because I can think of a lot of good things about being a philosopher.
Can I be a welder, a philosopher, make a sandwich? You know.
You know.
It's
I don't need to be a welder to make a sandwich.
That's true.
Here, I built this sandwich, Marco Rubio. I think so. There's a lot to be said, man. There's a lot to be done. But
there's a lot to be observed with these Republican presidential candidates.
On a lighter note, let's shift to something lighter because we've had, 20 minutes of intense dialogue on pretty meta things. What do you think about this? And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be that guy. What do you think about these red cups? What do you know about these red cups at Starbucks and why it's such a big fucking deal on the internet?
The red cups at Starbucks. I've heard it's about stepping back and not promoting as much of Christmas values and kind of promoting more all around holiday values.
Really? Is that what it is?
That's.
I saw the funny thing here's the funny thing. I saw the red cup from Starbucks.
Yeah.
And I thought it was like a red Solo cup that they put a Starbucks thing on. And I was like, people are drinking beer at Starbucks now? What?
That would be a good change.
Yeah, that's a real values changer right there.
Go to Starbucks.
Get a beer at Starbucks, coffee shop that sells alcohol. Let's go. Does it stop being a coffee shop?
No, I don't. I don't want it to stop. You know, but yeah, it's about kind of. I've heard it's more about expression of businesses.
Yeah.
Expressing religions.
Oh, really?
Ideals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting conversation, man. Because what do you think about that? Because I think businesses should have the right to do that. But on the other side of the coin, you have places like Chick-fil-A that does all that, all that fucking homophobic shit. We're proud to be... They're using their Christianness in a very non-Christian way. They're trying to pander towards this ideology of we don't... I have so much to say about this. It's tough, man, right? Because if you let one business do it, then you gotta let another one, speak their mind and shit.
I don't know. It's been very interesting. I think, the issue of gay rights, it really came up pretty strongly in, Indiana, how...
Florida, too.
The biggest businesses were just this is unacceptable to be against it anymore.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of speaks to, the success of kind of BuzzFeed and other simple
media,
simple
internet media outlets,
liberal media outlets on getting across easy messages of respecting people. It's it is a good thing.
Yeah,
I guess to a certain extent to have that ability.
Well, I just think it's it's tough, man. It's tough because it's when you allow for that, when you advocate for businesses, which are important entities in the let's be honest, this is a country that's built on a bunch of things, but within the current thing, business is a big thing. Small businesses, big businesses, whatever. And I think that it's an important thing to talk about business in a certain way, because you're providing a business is what is it? A service that a group of people provide for another group of people. They sell products, services, whatever.
Products, whether helpful or
killing
you.
Yeah, they compete in this market. Blah blah blah. Good businesses are supposedly stay in the market. Bad businesses, this very simplistic idea of what a business does and stuff. And given the position of these businesses in American society, I think it's important to recognize that, they should have a say in things. They should be able to speak their minds on things collectively as an organization, Can organizations speak their minds or
But,
things?
yeah.
You know? But when is it okay? Why?
Have the organizations or businesses been speaking the minds, or has it just been
Yeah. How are they
the
speaking
people
their
at
minds?
the top?
Mhm.
The people at the top of the organization are speaking their minds,
Right.
and having all the control and influence. And
Right.
the people at the bottom, the workers,
Yeah.
the people.
I'm
within
curious.
the business
That's a
aren't
good
necessarily
point. What would do you
being
think every
represented.
do you think every Chick-fil-A worker, you know,
Is-
was like on board with that shit? Like on board when like Chick-fil-A was all like, "Oh, we have the right to refuse, you know, service to you if you're, you know,
Yeah.
gay." Or was it about marriage? They were like, "Oh, we support like marriage or whatever." Same thing with the Hobby Lobby and all these places.
Yeah, because I've heard it's more the issue of just the CEOs
Mhm.
having this, and the CEOs donating politically
Right,
to
right.
those. But you know, these CEOs have more power to donate politically to
Yeah.
their,
They have a bigger
their
voice.
self-interest. Yeah,
They have a bigger
They
voice.
have a significantly bigger voice within
Mhm.
our society,
Yeah.
and that's something that's I don't know. People try to be like ignorant of it, but I don't know. It's in the age of the internet. Doesn't matter like how? Because I mean, there's still monopolies on the internet
Yeah.
of like who controls the voices as well.
Yeah. Not every right. If you want, yeah, something that I find super interesting on like Facebook, on our Facebook page, is when I see the number of people. Like Facebook is really cool because they give you like when you administer like a page, like it shows you how many people are like looking at the page and like who's liking, who's sharing, just so you can get a better idea, which is like pretty cool. But then there's this thing called Boost. If you pay like $5, then you can sponsor yourself in a certain area. You know, it becomes this whole thing about like, well, some people might just have a lot of money.
Yeah, and they can
And they can just boost their like page and stuff rather than like people like listening.
and it gets suggested to other people, maybe on our friends list, who
Yeah,
who we didn't really care about, or we're just like
yeah, and they're friends,
ignoring. Yeah,
and they're you know it becomes like a little. It becomes like that, and that's because people don't have the time to listen to all these things. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
shit out there.
yeah,
People saying crazy, really important stuff.
yeah.
You know,
Or crazy podcast stories.
crazy
man.
podcasts. Yeah.
I was listening to one a couple days ago about like these like crazy horror stories.
hmm Oh yes, lore,
Yeah.
lore.
I don't know if it was called that. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Yeah,
There's-
that's what we're competing with.
Yeah, you know,
a little bit.
a little bit in certain ways. I think the what's it called? I think the structure of our show sort of lends itself to a more sort of familiar, like just two people
Yeah.
talking about things, discussing issues and stuff like that. I think that's what it sort of lends itself to.
Yeah, do people want to listen to that?
I
A
don't know.
couple do.
Yeah. Yo, so what do you think about what's happening in Missouri? Have you read about that?
I have really not. I don't think I know enough
Mm-hmm.
on the issue. I've heard something about racial comments made by the athletic director against the students.
Interesting.
I don't. That's all I've heard. And then
I've
the
been
students
paying
protested against getting into the game.
I've been paying pretty close attention to this and stuff. And so what happened was the black community, the black student community in the University of Missouri had apparently been dealing with like a lot of like hate crimes. And the president and the president's administration at the university had not been responding to anything. Like there was a shit swastika. A swastika made of shit. And like I think one of the black student unions or like some sort of like black student center and stuff. And like that's intentional. That's very, very
Yeah.
intentional. That's very, very intentional.
Yeah.
You know? And so if something like that were to happen here at Earlham,
Yeah, I mean,
we would
it'd be like a week off and like
it would be tense here. People would be pissed off. I think the majority of us would be pissed off. But then again, we're a small school. We're relatively diverse when you look at other schools that are like us or comparable to us. You know, having all that in mind, still, the president at the University of Missouri did nothing. So what happened was the football players, the black football players, decided to boycott. Said they were going to boycott their next game because of all the like bad like thing, because of all this injustice really that was taking place, and so they stood together in solidarity together, and the president and the chancellor, which is such a weird like word for like a position of somebody in anything in any organization. Chancellor, like it makes me think of like Chancellor Palpatine from like Star Wars.
He's talking about how corrupt universities are. The universities are pretty corrupt places. Yeah.
So you have these two like major figures stepping down because the university would have lost a lot of money if these players had not played in that football game. So these players found a way to stand together to hit the university where it really hurts, and to sort of rephrase what a lot of like internet articles have said. They showed that what the most important color is. Yeah. The most important color there is not black necessarily. It's green. Yeah. That's what they really care about. That's the color they care about the most. Yeah. Green. And so after this victory for the students that boycotted this stuff, and there were students that like stood in solidarity with the football players, professors that did that, everything. This was a community thing. The football players obviously got the spotlight because they did the
they walked out on a game. Yeah,
they decided they were threatening to not play a game, and their coach did too. Their coach supported them. But then a couple of days afterwards, the University of Missouri is in utter chaos, dog. You have basically some white students. I've heard this from the internet, from multiple alternative news sources, not from the big media. With big media,
they're not covering.
They ended it. They ended it once the president and the chancellor resigned. They cut it there.
No, I've been hearing like that's all I heard. I didn't hear anymore, and I've been like questioning the sources. I'm like, what exactly is happening then after right now? Are there issues with like white students on campus?
Yeah, dude, on Yik Yak here, and this is another a testament to our times. On Yik Yak, there was people put some stupid shit on Yik Yak.
Yeah,
everybody puts to really test things. But there's somebody that said I'm gonna come tomorrow to the university, and I'm gonna shoot black students.
Yeah.
That's not somebody trying to be funny after everything that's happened and stuff. If you're paying any attention to what's happening in your community, in your university, that's not something you boast just because, one, it's in terrible taste, and two, you're really threatening people's lives there. Yeah. Especially with all the shit, all the mass shootings that happen in America and shit. That's not funny,
all the time. You can't, you never really should have had the ability to say that.
Yeah.
As a joke or, in any context.
Yeah.
Of, murdering other people,
and with the very specific intent, saying I'm gonna murder black students. So it becomes this whole thing. It's the whole situation is very revealing. I would argue about it was very revealing as to where we are as a society right now in America. It's incredible, dude. You push against these systems of power, these institutions. Just a little bit. All the football players said, we're not going to play one game. This is what they said. Yeah. We're not going to play one game. President and chancellor resigned, both white. White people.
Yeah. That's, there's a lot of systemic issues within, large university culture that are, really starting to come to the surface.
Yeah.
Ignoring racial minorities and, being in it for the money. I mean, universities are a huge business nowadays.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
People do not understand how closely knit these universities are at the top levels with certain families and certain dynasties.
Yeah.
And it's causing huge issues of ignorance towards the student bodies. Thinking that they can get away with this shit. Yeah.
Here's the thing, dog, and here's where the what's it called? There was that old saying, the straw breaks on the camel's back or whatever. We live in a culture where more people have to go to college, right? They have to go to these higher systems of education because that's what the economy is requesting of them. You can't just graduate from high school and do whatever.
Yeah, and we want people to go to.
We want intelligent.
Our high school system is like failing miserably, and our college system is what's making up for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You could suck, and this is true. I know this with people in my community. You could be just a shitty high school student. The whole system could have failed you, and you could still go to a community college, really get serious, and take a lot from it.
Yeah, community college, bounce back from that, go to a university.
Go to your university, or transfer to even a private school if your grades are good enough. You could do. The system has a lot of fail-safes in it and stuff.
Yeah, and college is very much part of that.
Yeah.
And that it's very much it's very much a new thing of its large exploitation of college students. And there's been a lot of people are really starting to fight back against it, and this is kind of the friction that it creates.
It reveals these structures that had always been in place, but it's just the time won't allow for our generation, the present historical moment, the historical forces that have led to this moment, I have to push against that, not out of desire, but out of necessity. I think there's something about necessity that sort of presupposes all of these movements and things,
Yeah, necessity is within even economics of our developing technologies and being able to stay on top of it. Top of it.
Yeah, and let's presume that this this is another thing the Republicans were talking about yesterday in the global competitiveness. Did you hear this one? This one's a good one. I can't believe I didn't mention this earlier. Donald Trump yesterday, whether he was, whether he stumbled or whether he was trying to, what he said about wages in the U.S. yesterday?
What? He said?
He said they were too high.
Too high.
He said wages in the United States were too high. Now, Darren, how can you say that when there's so much data out there that suggests that Americans are working harder and longer hours, they're being more productive, and yet the real value of their incomes are not the same than they were 40 years ago.
No, yeah.
To rephrase in a better and more simpler way, people are working harder, longer hours, and getting paid less than they were, 40 years ago. But Donald Trump says that wages are too high. Get the fuck out of here, dog. What the fuck? This is from somebody who never had to depend on their labor to work, to sustain themselves. How? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Oh, and he'll get applause from people.
Don't worry about that. He's still one in the polls. He's still number one in the polls. It's early and all, but he's still number one in the polls.
Yeah, man. I think that's a good closing thought. All right, man.